The girl knocked on the door, they greeted her, and said that they were glad to see her at the king's estate, and they also called her Fiora. The girl didn't understand why I was called by a different name and thought that she had come to the wrong place. Well, suddenly she remembered that this was all from the book Children and the Duke, which she had read. This is the main character's family, but why did she reincarnate as another person? It turns out that she is a villain who will be rejected by the main character, before that she was a very ordinary teacher. And so they stood by the road and waited for the mother of one of the children who was late. When suddenly the boy saw his mother and wanted to run across the road, the teacher told him to hold hands. But he didn't listen and ran out onto the road. The teacher immediately ran up to him and pushed him aside. That was the end of her memories of her past life, but she doesn't regret anything, because she saved the boy. But why then did she become the antagonist of the novel? Fiora is one of the main characters in the novel The Duke's Children. She is the evil bride of the main character. This cruel woman constantly tortured innocent children, and the maid noticed her vile behavior, so the girl kidnapped her and locked her up. But justice prevailed, and the main character was executed. Those chilling feelings from your own death at the moment of the accident you never want to feel again. And if she is not cruel and does not take care of the children, will she be able to survive? Maybe she can just hang out there, not get too carried away by the main character, and spend the money on opening a kindergarten. And when this happens, she will be able to provide for her sweet children. She will not be an evil bride, but will be a kind educator to all the children. The children also came out to greet her and called her Your Highness. The girls also stood with flowers and greeted her. She thought that she had gone to heaven after death. It was too much, because everything was wonderful and vanilla. It was enough to make a diabetic fall into a coma. She fell in love with them immediately and wanted to stay with him forever. She was not created for an evil role. And she told the Duke that she would do whatever his children wished for good purposes. So she asked to hire her as a nanny or a teacher, after which they went into the house. The girl was walking down the corridor when suddenly someone tugged at her dress. It was a girl who asked to be picked up. Suddenly, the older boy came up and said that she couldn't do that because she was their guest. Suddenly, all the children ran up and didn't introduce themselves by name, but the baby in her arms was the youngest of them. Suddenly, someone shouted that they had not fulfilled their promise. But what promise did the person mean? This is the same main character who told the children to stay in their rooms when an important guest arrived. The youngest daughter was taken from her arms, and the Duke himself personally approached her and greeted her. He kissed her hand and said that he was glad to see her on his estate and that his name was Child. The girl was silent, but suddenly remembered that she needed to answer and said her name and was ready to complete all the tasks. He apologized if his family had worn her out, when suddenly he turned to them and said that they had not fulfilled their promise. And he said that he must be obeyed in any case, and that this should not happen again. The man wanted to take the lady somewhere and offered to hold her hand. They came to a place that looked like a huge gallery, and there was very tasty tea and cookies. The man saved whether everything was fine with the girl, when suddenly she wondered how she looked now. He said that the engagement would take place in about a month, and even though this was a marriage of convenience, he would still try his best. It's only a month. Time is clearly not on her side, but it's not like she's going to marry him. The man stood up and said that he thought they had better rest. The main thing is that the butler would soon be here to show her the house. He apologizes that he won't be able to take care of it personally, but if he needs anything, he can contact the butler. The girl immediately asked if she could spend time with his brothers and sisters. The man answered sullenly that the children would decide that, but it also seemed that she should ask her guardian's permission. The man asked if she really liked children, babies, so much that she worried about them so much. The girl said with a smile on her face that she adored them, but the man wasn't even surprised. Why would he ask about this? Does he really perceive her as the girl from the original story? But there is no need to panic. She is a caring educator to the core, so these children are in good hands. After the man left, a butler named Crimson showed her around. Her room is on the second floor. It is luxurious. Even the door handles look like pieces of treasure. She was also introduced to two maids, two charming girls. Their names were Ilona and Lena. Her first order was to bring her a pen and paper. She wanted to write down everything she remembered about the novel. After all, it is this information that will help her survive in this life. Only she didn't remember whether it was the third child and the princess of the empire, or the second. In any case, among the knights there is a man who will soon betray the Duke. But here's why the guy betrayed him. She needs to remember the details in order to come to an agreement with him. And just remember her favorite moments with the kids, for example, a picnic with the main character and all that stuff. Well, who knew that her life would depend on some insignificant details? There is nothing to be afraid of here. All you need to do is take good care of the children, and then you can pick up the missing pieces. Why are you so tired, girl, when you haven't done anything yet? I lay down on the bed and thought that tomorrow would be no less difficult day. She also missed her mother very much when suddenly someone knocked on the door. They were maids, and they said that the Duke was asking to join him for dinner. And the girl asked for help with her dress and understood that she needed to look luxurious. They put makeup on her, and only now I realized that they gave her a second chance, even though this life is very difficult. But this was her chance, and she had to give it her all. She gathered her thoughts and went out to dinner. The girl looked luxurious in a blue dress and was confident that she could cope and become a nanny for the ducal family. The guy was shocked by the girl's beauty and asked her to sit at the table. The girl asked why the children weren't having dinner. She came to dinner just to see these cuties. They brought dinner and wished her bon appetit. The girl even felt shy. It was too bad that she didn't really understand all these rules of eating. It seems like she knows these rules like the back of her hand. But this is not so. She repeats everything the princess did before, like muscle memory. Suddenly, the man asked if she had time to look at the estate, and she replied that she was too tired, so she decided to rest. When the Duke said that after dinner he would show us around himself, it was very kind of him. Apart from the various announcements from the maids, there was deathly silence. But she prayed that I wouldn't end either. Even this awkward silence was better than walking around the estates. They had dinner and went to look around the house. While climbing the stairs, the girl tripped, and she fell right on the man. He asked if she was hurt, but she was fine. She didn't expect it, but they went up to the roof. What did he want to show her there? The Duke told her to come closer and asked if she liked the view. She replied that he was beautiful and immensely magnificent. The garden is simply huge, and it is easy to get lost there, so if she wants to see it, it is better not to go alone. There was also a wild forest, and in the center a tower in which the Duke's residence was located. This is where all the important events of history take place. She definitely has to go there. But the man said that the tower and the forest were best avoided at all costs, as they were very dangerous. The man seemed to read her thoughts, but if she urgently needed to go there, she would need to take a member of the order with her. It got colder outside, and they returned to the house. The child also showed her where the reception area and the study were located. Why did he take her to the greenhouse where there were many beautiful flowers? And by that time, 2 children came up to her and said that they had a request. Well, looking at the man, the lady did not understand why he was so cold towards children. They apologized for what happened earlier and offered their sincere apologies. The man was very irritated by this and said that there was no need to worry about it. He also said this to the other 2 children who were hiding behind the column. And he said that it was time for them to sleep, but they did not go to their beds. The girl sincerely wished them good night and told them to have wonderful dreams. Then the man and the girl decided to part ways and wish each other good night. After that kiss, he went to his piece, which was right next to mine. She was able to see that she could handle it alone. A hot bath with rose petals was very relaxing, and she also remembered some details from the book. In the story itself, the child why you kept your distance from your relatives, and the reason for this was that his biological mother died many years ago. And the grown-up guy had a hard time accepting the harsh reality. He was enduring a difficult time as a duke and guardian of other people's children. It's not hard to understand why he is so cold and distant towards everyone. He is focused on more important things. But they are still children. They need love. And then it appears, which will give them everything they need. And she will give them all the love she can. The girl was sleeping peacefully when suddenly she felt someone nearby. It was Jasmine. She called her mom and asked for a hug. It seems she is very lonely. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. She didn't understand who wanted to come to her at such a time. It was the girl's sister who asked if the girl had a younger sister in the room. The girl apologized that her sister had disturbed her sleep, but she left her to sleep in her room. It seems like something like this happens here often, because their mother lived in this room at the time. She told the girls that something could sleep with her too. After all, she's only 8 years old, and she can afford this, and it's also cold. Morning came. Thanks to this, the girls were warm and cozy. The first night was just wonderful. The child asked the girl how she slept, and she replied that everything was fine. You don't need to drive out bad feelings by doing exercises every morning. They started doing exercises just like in kindergarten. It was funny. The baby woke up and saw that her mother was sleeping next to her. Suddenly, the girl started crying. The maid ran up and asked what happened. And suddenly, my lady took the child in her arms and said that they would have tea after breakfast. It's hard for her to decide who to invite to it, because there are a lot of tasty treats and desserts. The girl stopped crying, with the main condition being to be cheerful and happy. And so, they all went to tea and breakfast, and finally her experience as a teacher came in handy. The weather was great outside and the birds were singing, when suddenly they saw a familiar person nearby. It was the older brother again with his cold gaze. The man asked if he could go for a walk with them, and the children beamed with happiness. She just wanted to have tea with the children and invited him along with them. Suddenly, 2 more guys came running and were surprised that the man was walking with them. He seemed to have never been in such a situation before, and for tea drinking the more people the better, and then he agreed. Child extended his hands to the children because he saw a sad look so that they would rejoice. The children thought he was less attentive, and also the other children wanted to hold his hands. The girl thought that the man wanted to get closer to the children, even though it looked a little strange. They sat down at the table, and the child asked how she slept at home. She answered that everything was great thanks to these wonderful guys. When suddenly he said that the children could be hers forever, and they could all live together. The girl, in order not to upset the children, said that everything would be like this. Suddenly the butler came up and said that he urgently needed to talk to the owner. The butler is a very busy man, so the man is forced to take his leave. Suddenly the boy said that he thought the man hated them. He couldn't even spend more time. His sister called him a fool. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that he wouldn't hold hands with someone he hates. The girl intervened and said that he doesn't hate them. He cares about them, even though he doesn't show it much. He didn't drive them away after their parents died, but they wished he was a little warmer towards them. Well, the kids still adored their older brother no matter what. He has a lot of responsibilities, so you shouldn't be independent and not distract him. Now they didn't think about what they would do all day. To start with, they suggested playing princesses. My sister said that this tea was amazing. The girls were pleased to hear that. She was called the young princess, with whom it was a great honor to drink tea. The children stood up to describe everything around them and imagine that they were real princesses and princes. Suddenly, a boy named Thomas came up, and he was very afraid of doing something wrong. And he kissed her hand in honor of the attention. She also called her Your Highness. It's so sweet that he's trying to act mature, but I still feel sorry for him. The girl can't let this mongrel smoke alone, so they went for a walk somewhere. The girl and Toma were left alone, and she said that now we would bring hot tea. But the boy replied that it was not worth it. They did not need to try to be warmer towards them. But the girl didn't even try. She already loves them with all her heart. Well, the boy said that he was sure that no one needed them and that they were a burden to everyone, especially because they will marry his brother and have their own children. He does not strive to be the head of this family, so he asks to leave them alone. And the boy said that they were no different from ordinary people, and there was no need to worry about them. The lady said that she would never get close to them just because of that. It's normal that he doesn't trust a girl with anything, but why tarnish his warmth? The boy said that it had always been like this, and he was telling the truth. She never said such a thing, and never saw them in such a light. She considered them simply beloved children who deserved care and love. Suddenly, she asked about his family, but his parents were no longer there, and his older brother pretended that they didn't exist. Well, he also has younger brothers and sisters. Doesn't he worry about them? Of course he worries. He loves them very much, but he doesn't show it, when suddenly someone screamed. The girl screamed that an evil sorcerer, who was her older brother, was chasing her, and she asked Thomas to save him. She ran at full speed at him, hiding in his arms. Well, that won't help the princess, said the evil sorcerer. The girls, seeing this from the outside, said that everything was going wrong and they should intervene. Suddenly, Thomas thought that he was too useless. It made him very upset. 2 girls approached the boy and said that they would tickle him to death. Thomas laughed at the whole situation and asked if he could join their hunt for the sorcerer. The children, of course, agreed. The more people, the more interesting. After a while, the children fell to the floor from fatigue, having played to their heart's content. He would have collected it if she had said that he trusted her completely. Well, since his brothers and sisters were confident in her, he decided that he would give the girl a chance. Well, that was enough for the girl. This was the beginning of their wonderful friendship. After 3 weeks, they didn't communicate with Thomas very often, but he had noticeably become kinder. As for the rest, I became quite close to them. They walked and chatted about everything. And also knights returned from the capital, the order of the child family called the Fiery. Like other knights, they command 2 squads, blades that are official knights, and the guards, who are called upon to carry out any orders and personally protect the king's family. And the girl has a personal guard, the very one who will kill her in the end. The problem is that she can't remember exactly what he looks like. It's not just saving her skin, but also for the sake of the children. He's had a hard time. He's not from an influential family. In addition, he can power his sword with mana. Only half a dozen people in this entire world have such power. If she means it to her guards, then she will have to meet with the head of the knights. This way, she will be able to understand what kind of threat the girl represented to him and take control of the situation. Suddenly, the maid came in and asked how she could be of service, because she had heard the bell. The lady said that she needed to find the knight and tell him that she needed to meet with the guards. Later, she came to the knight's training ground. She was quite huge. This is the largest place after the royal palace. Suddenly, a girl ran up and said that she heard her going to the training ground. And the girl thought that the girl wanted to see her brother in action, but she just really likes fencing. The girl is very good at music, and it's great that she's so curious at such an age. They walked into the wrestling room and saw that I didn't use real weapons for my regular training. The brother saw his sister and highness at the door and ran straight to them. He was very interested in when they would arrive, and he waited for them every second. The girl hoped that they would not distract him from training, but he still needed to rest. As a friend from behind, the coach said that he wanted to show the surrounding training grounds. The boy said that he would show it first only to his sister and then to the lady. The girl said that she would sit down because she was tired, and for now they should go together. They will return soon, and then she will choose a guard for herself, but for now she will rest. She told the butler to escort the children so that nothing would happen. While she was thinking, someone approached her and was afraid to say anything. She said, "At your service, your highness. This is the leader of the Order of Flame." She decided that she would not let history go that way. She will change and become the best nanny for children, and not only for them. The man said he had a couple of candidates who were skilled and trained. For this, he will not arrange a competition. He is her brother to accompany her, but he has urgent matters. The girl asked him what had happened. It turns out that his mother is currently struggling with an illness. And suddenly, at that moment, she remembered that his mother was terminally ill. She promised to provide her with treatment and used it, and at that time, she didn't know anything. While the girl was planning the executions, Gray's mother's condition worsened and she died from the poison. But this time, she wanted to cure her. And she asked if he could tell her in more detail about his mother's condition and what symptoms she had. The man said that she felt dizzy after eating and that lately she had been craving sweets. The girl left these symptoms in her head, and it seemed she understood what was going on, but asked a couple more questions. Most likely she feels thirstier than usual and has lost quite a lot of weight, that was true. And apparently she has diabetes. The author of the book described real diseases from our world. Now the man saw her in a completely different light, and there was nothing special about it. When the girl gave him recommendations that he needed to limit his intake of sweets and take short walks after meals. Well, you could also give him whole grain black bread, but the man wasn't sure that it would help. The lady said that if I didn't get better after her advice, she would personally notify her. He would do as she ordered, even though she was putting on some kind of show, but it was all true. And before they go, she needs to assign an escort. This recruit coach is very tall and big, like a giant, and he asked to be allowed to escort the girl as a candidate. She looked at him and felt that something was wrong. He was strange. Maybe it was because of his frightening appearance. And he told the girl to sit down. Perhaps she wouldn't have to wait long. He didn't seem to be on her enemy's list. Thomas came running and screamed in fear, calling the girl for help. The lady knelt down and listened to the boy. It turned out that the girl had gone to the toilet and had not returned. And there are a lot of dangerous weapons here. He had to watch her in case something happened. They decided to look for her together. The main thing was not to panic, but to collect their thoughts. The girl shouted her name throughout the hall, and all the knights also needed to be notified. But she couldn't have gone far. Was she really wounded? Suddenly, my brother heard some steps behind the door. Perhaps it was the girl. The boy prayed that everything would be okay with her and was afraid to open the door. There really was a girl there. The lady ran quickly up to her and examined her. But thank God there were no wounds on her, and she was alive and well. But suddenly she saw someone nearby. There was a man lying there bleeding, and he needed urgent help. The girl heard the man's groans and ran to him as quickly as possible. Yes, Mom said that she did the right thing, and that she is a great girl. The man said that he had a big wound near his head, but it was not fatal. The girl did everything right and saved him. She asked Clemson to look after them. Well, where did the man disappear to? It turns out he was looking for food for the children. Suddenly, the man came to his senses and shouted something incomprehensible. The man told him to watch his language, because he was facing His Imperial Highness. It turns out that this is the man who is soon to kill the girl. He's such a cute redhead, just like he was described in the book. He was pleased to meet her and was ready to carry out any tasks. It was great that he himself decided to become the girl's guard. He asked if they didn't first need to find the one who did this to her. The man said that he would protect them from all troubles and take away what he so desired. Of course, it was interesting to find out what motivates him. It sounded too childish. But if the candidate is injured, it will be an unfair competition, and before taking revenge, something else must be done. The guy didn't understand what he meant and asked again. She replied that she should thank this little girl who saved him and stopped the bleeding. And he spoke very nicely to the girl and said that he would definitely repay her, even give his life for her. That's why this character is the main one in the book. He is cruel to his enemies, but kind to homes and children. And so, we need to return to the issue of the guard. They could have postponed it, but there is a more serious problem. What if those who want to take his place do something similar again? They can simply be executed. Well, then the man decided to tell who did this to him. It was 3 guys. Suddenly, the man interrupted him and said that it was their personal business. She thought it was weird, like this guy was involved in this and the red-haired guy's look, like he was waiting for this to happen. This means that there are many people in the city who are not focused on it and have not been for a long time. He couldn't trust or rely on anyone, so he had to do everything himself. He promised the girls that he would deal with all the problems associated with the fight himself. And then the girl asked that she wanted to know exactly who attacked him. And at that moment, a man was sitting in the office and thinking that everything was fine. But he should have gone too. Maybe he could have picked a better guard for her. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, and it turned out to be Crimson. The chief asked if the guards had chosen a queen, and he replied that they had not yet. He ordered the maid to prepare snacks and drinks for Her Highness, and he came to ask, or rather to inform, that they would rise. And at that moment, the man thought that he should join, but secretly. The girl was still asking who did this to the guy. He named exactly 3 men, and the princess said that they should be expelled from the order. The guy read it as too harsh a punishment, but it was just right. And these knights are not at all suitable for the position. The man tried to intimidate her. After all, she is just a foreigner and not even the duke's wife. Suddenly, the children stood up for the girl and said that she was going to marry their brother. And the girl told him to immediately apologize to her for his behavior. Suddenly, the man couldn't stand this attitude towards himself and took aim at the child. At that moment, the child appeared and grabbed him by the neck. How did he end up next to them at that moment at the right time? The man asked what he was doing on his sacred lands, how he could allow himself to do this. They are knights of the Order of the Crescent Moon, and all who raise the sword at his command do so for the sake of the kingdom. The most important thing for the kingdom is not your power, but a peaceful, prosperous people. The girl had heard this phrase before. It was one of the key phrases in the story. The girl added that the next phrases should have been the words that he lives for the sake of service. The man didn't understand how she knew what he wanted to say. Even the girl knew Aiden's speech by heart. It's terrible that his own knight doesn't know these words. Shame and disgrace. The guy said that he had to apologize heartily to the girls and children. He stood up and apologized, most likely not sincerely, but the main thing is that he did it. The man looked at him with an angry look, but the girl still forgave him. What if the guy said that this was not enough, that he had offended the gentleman too much? It is unacceptable to disrespect your highness in this way, and also to intimidate a lady. Then they decided to come up with another punishment, and he asked the girl. And the man said that you can just cut the head off your shoulders, but not in front of the children. But taking a life is clearly too much, because his attitude towards children is terrible. He judges people based on their status. Plus, he tried to hit a child, and the punishment should fit the crime. She suggested locking her in a pigsty, among others like him, and letting her run around with them on all fours. The man confirmed this punishment and told him to take him to the pigsty. The brother picked up the girl and apologized. He should have sensed something was wrong earlier. The girl said that it was not his fault at all that this guy was so bad, and we still shouldn't thank this wonderful knight. The brother said that he would protect her until she grew up, and the younger brother thought that he hated them, but this situation brought them closer together. The girl was glad that the situation was resolved, and no one held a grudge against anyone. It's great that everything turned out without sad outcomes. After that day, everything was quiet. The guy was still sitting there with the pigs. Denton was finally able to spread his wings and pass the test to remove the rivals. And the girl herself had a great time with the children. She really liked life and wealth. She asked the knight if he wanted to join them, and he happily sat down at the table. He became a wonderful helper, and that guy's mother should soon be completely cured. All she needs to do is continue in the same spirit and smoothly transition to becoming their nanny and teacher. The butler came up and said that he had urgent news, but he was interrupted by the children. Her brother ate her chocolate pudding and cookies, and they fought and screamed. But they can take more cookies. The girl asked them to be quieter. The boy said that his sister should apologize, but they can't always ask for more food. They argued over such a trifle, but they can't make noise because they are children. It's a natural part of growing up. It looks like it's time for the heavy artillery, the perfect game to get them all focused on one thing. Inspired by the hermit crab, this game is one no child can resist. It helps to concentrate. Now they are all hermit ships. All the children repeated after the girl, but only one boy did not want to. Well, since this is an order, he has already done everything and put his hands on his head. When she says the word crab, they have to shout to damn and concentrate. And so the girl said this magic word, and all the children fell silent and calmed down. The butler really liked this technique. It calms the children. The man said that his lordship was hosting a banquet at the weekend. This means there will be many important guests there, and perhaps he will want to announce the engagement. But if the girl is not happy with something, she may not go. But for her it was very important. Tears of joy flowed from her eyes. She was in anticipation of the banquet, and her gaze noticeably became sadder. The butler said that he would take his leave then, since he had told all the main news. The girl could not go against his wishes. She still had to appear there. Then the younger sister asked if she could go to the banquet with them. The lady replied that of course it was possible, but why was I allowed to attend the banquet then? Does the brother really hate them and is just pretending? The butler said that the tea party was a great success, and it was all thanks to the butler. The girl said that she urgently needed to talk to the prince and that he was now in his office. And the butler allowed her to wait inside the office until he returned. The girl felt uncomfortable being in his office without his presence, but she was his fiancée. The man told her to sit down on the sofa and he would be back soon. The girl thought he was very helpful. Maybe it was because of the crab game. The girl sat on the sofa, she felt, but remembered how different this room was from the others. It's so simple and not at all luxurious. Most of the room is antiques. There is an office that seemed very cozy and familiar. I saw warmth and home. The girl was blinded by the loud, measured sound and warm light, but she realized that she needed to get ready and not sleep, when suddenly she saw that it was already sunset. It turns out that she had already fallen asleep, and the man did not wake her up. She apologized for coming in uninvited and for falling asleep. The man said that there was nothing wrong with that, because it was almost her home. She asks that next time she warns him in advance about her visit, so that she doesn't have to wait long. He must be programmed, because he speaks like a typical romance novel hero. Madame had an important message. She wanted not to screw up, because she needed to think about the children. And he said that the kids also wanted to go to the banquet, but the man didn't even resist. If they asked her to take care of it, then he would issue a stern warning. She was sure that he was categorically against them taking part in this. They are not ready for their first outing yet, but since this is a family event, it is possible. At first, the girl didn't understand what he was talking about, but suddenly it dawned on her. In the first one, a person shows himself in Soviet society, and children are still too young for this. The girl apologized and said that it was her fault, and he was an excellent guardian. She thanked him for his time and attention and went to her room. She also returned to him the jacket that he had covered her with while she was sleeping. The man called the butler into his office and said that his bride wanted to invite the children to the banquet. And then I, the man, asked what the butler thought about this girl. And he has no right to speak out on such topics. But if he had to, he would tell what he thinks. I would say that she is surprisingly very good at handling and caring for children. This was enough for the man to hear, and the butler left. She takes very good care of the children, but this doesn't fit at all with what they don't say. After all, Princess Fiora is as rude and cruel as she is beautiful and smart. She couldn't just lie down and fall asleep on an uncomfortable sofa. And yet, if his brothers and sisters are hanging around her, it means she means a lot to them. Judging by their complex list, you need to be much more talented and smart to win their approval. After all, 10 other nannies and governesses resigned of their own accord. Either this is all a perfectly orchestrated plan, or it's just bad rumors. The girl was presented with another dress, which she must try on for the banquet. It is made of the rarest fabric in the entire kingdom and very expensive jewelry. She, of course, knew that the prince's fortune was enormous, but ordering a priceless dress was too much. And all these dresses are already paid for, so she just needs to choose the one she likes. Looking at the dress, she immediately discarded the options. One had a too thin corset, another had too many decorations. And she said that she would take the last one that was tried on. Everyone said that it was a great option, but she still needs to choose outfits for the children. She is more curious about them than about the dress. Well, another tailor is in charge of clothes for the lords and children, but for some reason he hasn't sent the clothes yet. The woman said that the tailor's workshop was not far from hers. I didn't go there immediately with the children, and I also took the night with me. They arrived at the place, and it was very modest, and the clothes on display were very pale. A girl came out and said that she had brought His Highness to a large store. She asked why the children's clothes had not arrived yet, and there was only one day left before the banquet. But the girl said to send them tomorrow morning, and now she is collecting and packing them. She saw those very costumes. Although she doesn't really understand fashion, but they were terrible. The girl asked a professional fashion designer if these children's clothes would fit. Take a closer look at the suit, and she claimed the fabric was of terrible quality. Apart from the design, the fabric is very cheap and the jewelry is fake. It turns out they were given very little money and told to use cheap fabrics and decorations. If some young maid had told her about this, she would have doubted it, but the order was given by the head maid and the Duke's representative. And the maid was sure that the children would wear these hand-me-downs. Then the knight suggested looking for new suitable outfits until tomorrow. She needed to come to her senses right away and think ahead. The girl had a request for the fashion designer, and she listened to His Highness with all her attention. And I asked her to alter the outfits by tomorrow so that they would look decent. The girl said that she would do everything in the best possible way and that it would be delivered on time. The girl felt like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She was sure that the girl would not let her down. The problem is solved. If it was not a conspiracy, then ill-wishers can plot against children. The girl told the knight not to tell the Duke about this. You need to carefully hint this to the butler, and he will somehow convey it. Her Highness suggested having a snack and calling a carriage later. She took him to her favorite place, a restaurant analogous to the real world. The waiter met them and told them which table was looking at them. In her world, the food here is simply excellent, and in this world it is even more wonderful. Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice behind her and turned around. It was the Duke, and he asked if it was too early for dinner. She replied that she was passing by and just decided to grab a bite to eat. It turns out that this is his favorite place for lunch. It makes sense that if she knows about this place, then the main character does too. And then the man asked if she wanted to eat with him. He was a little hungry. She wanted to say no, but she couldn't refuse rudely. So I agreed, but in my heart, I didn't want to sit at the same table with him. When they ate, the child asked if she liked the food, because she was a little reserved. She replied that she liked everything, especially the orange cake. Short crust pastry with sweet orange jam and delicate chocolate glaze. The girl was glad that the taste was as special as in her world. She was ready to swear that the children would really like this cake, so she might as well get some for them. The man asked without emotion if she really liked the treat so much, and then he asked the waiter to pack them a box of cakes to take with them. The sun was already setting, and the children would be very curious to know where they had been all day. Suddenly, the girl remembered that she had forgotten to take the cake, but they would be brought when the carriage arrived. The girl even thought about ordering another package, but the man said that there was no need. It turns out that the pastry shop will be a job for them tomorrow. The girl admired the powerful rich man, but did he know about the situation with the children's costumes? Judging by how far he'll go to get them dessert, it's likely he doesn't know anything. Suddenly, the Duke saw the packages in his beloved's hands and asked what was in them. These were cookies for the knight. He was upset that she bought them especially for the guy. After a minute of awkward looking, the carriage arrived and they got into it. The man is young, but in this world he is already considered an adult, even if he does not feel anything special for her. The princess offered him to try the cookies, but he didn't understand right away. After all, this is a gift for a knight, so why should he try it? The girl said that it was high time for him to go to bed, and none of them had tried the cookies. Then the Duke tasted the biscuits and said nothing more. The next day, the maid discussed the topic, because today, His Highness would officially introduce himself for the first time. And they will first quickly do the base, and then put the finishing touches on the hair. Suddenly, the butler knocked on the door and asked if he could come in. He said that the fashion designer had arrived, and whether she needed to be taken to the guest room. The girl replied that she should wait for her in the guest room on the first floor. There she will prepare outfits for the children, so they also need to be called. The butler said that the lady wanted to call the main servant. She had something in mind. Probably he will deal with what the knight mentioned, and this needs to be reported to the master. Both the children and the maids arrived in the living room and waited to be shown the costumes. But they didn't even fully understand what was going on here. Perhaps these were preparations for a special occasion. And at that moment, Fiora arrived. A girl immediately ran up to her and said that she could not calm down and go to bed for a long time. And she asked if these outfits were for them, and she replied that yes, they were for the banquet. The girl told all the children to eat and listen carefully to their aunt. They presented a suit and dress for all the children, and she added everything that was appropriate to the outfit. The lining and accessories were replaced with better quality ones, and the dresses had to be remade from scratch. She asked them if they liked the costumes, and the children just looked at her with smiles. They couldn't even imagine that it was for them, so this is what Her Highness had in mind. They are beautiful, as if children were sleeping or in a dream. The girl asked for some changes because the original outfits were too awful. Then she asked who ordered the old outfits for the children. It was the head maid. She apologized and admitted that there were some flaws in the banquet outfits, and she hoped that this would not happen again, and if next time she encountered the same difficulties, she could contact her personally. She said that she would try to do her work independently from now on, but they must see everything through to the end, no matter what. When suddenly the Duke appeared in the hall, I blinded everyone with my costume. The children ran up to their brother and said that his beloved had given them these gorgeous outfits. Did he really say there was no need for that when he came in? Doesn't he like that she is strengthening her influence? I am joining in. I saw this at home. The man came up and apologized for causing her great inconvenience and for her working for his grandfather, and it was unacceptable for her to also ask you for help. It was time to prepare for the banquet, and the butler asked everyone to go upstairs. The girl took the children, and they went up to the floor above. Meanwhile, the Duke was asking the maid who had put her up to this. He checked his brothers' and sisters' rooms, and they were furnished in the same way, but in disarray. And then what kind of benefit is this? Bought specifically for his younger children. The woman said that these were all the other maids and she would punish them. But one of them said that she threatened her that if she reported it to the butler, she would be fired. How dare she appoint titled maids for herself when there is no such thing in their family and wasted money? But suddenly the women screamed that these half-breeds were not even part of his family. And no matter how she justifies herself now, it won't change the fact that she spent his money. And without thinking, the man said that she was fired without severe punishment. The maid insisted that he couldn't do that to her. She had done too much for him. She said that she put her soul into him when he was still a child. His ancestors would not have done that. Mine should have thought better because she knew who she was raising. And why is everyone just standing there? We need to give her a proper farewell for all the years of her work. The butler approached the man and said that a rather disturbing scene had taken place. It's terrible to admit that he didn't pay attention to such things. He doesn't take care of the children as well as the parents, but he looks after them and can stand up for them. As the chief butler, he had to be attentive to everything that concerned the lords and ladies. If it weren't for the princess, he might not have found out about this and might not have noticed all these problems. He has been with her for an endless time now, and if you think about it, he hasn't even thanked her properly. When he sees her at the banquet, he will definitely thank her properly. Meanwhile, the girl was already at the place of celebration. She wondered why they were traveling by carriage if the banquet was taking place in the estate itself. She couldn't even imagine that this place was so huge and the banquet hall was so luxurious. They are overcrowded and the carriages keep arriving and arriving. How many people will there be there? At that moment, the children came up and said that they had never seen the hall at this time. Find yourself more inspired than usual. It's time to start today's game. It is essential to stick together and only walk in pairs. Two will stick together as one, and then no one will get lost. This is a great way to make sure kids don't get lost in the crowd. The elder sister said that she wanted to unite with Jasmine, and the other two older siblings also united. Well, there was still one brother left, Thomas. The girl offered to be with her. She was so protective of the kids and said that he could handle it himself. But the girl insisted that they be together as a couple. Now everything was fine. The children were holding hands and it was possible to enter the hall. And so the Imperial Highness was announced, as well as the lords, ladies, and child families. All the girls in the room wanted to be in her place, but she heard it all anyway. They also said that the children were clearly preening for the occasion. After all, there are rumors that they are treated like trash. Not only are their clothes beautiful, but I am not themselves. They especially love this very little baby Jasmine. You don't have to twist her arm to get her to support child's family. In the original, all sorts of evil debutantes looked down on children, but now that won't happen. After all, it will change the whole story and plot. The man said that there was a table for them, prepared especially for His Highness. The brother said that from now on, she didn't need to look after them, because she needed to communicate with other people. Since she is now in the role of her older brother's fiancé, and she has more important responsibilities now, the girl agreed to leave the children for a while and talk to the guests. After some time, the girl chatted with some people. They were very glad to meet her. I had a lot of work. Thank God it's almost finished. What if her neck got pinched, and she didn't know what to do at that moment? And suddenly, a girl passed by, and she thought that His Highness was coming to greet her. Why did this happen at such an inopportune time, and what should we do now? Save your neck or lower your politeness, or better yet, be properly polite. There were many possible scenarios, and then she remembered what she had taught children before, that it is necessary to always say goodbye and hello, and she should be an example for all children. She greeted the girl and spoke politely. Suddenly, the girl's neck suddenly went away, as if she had taken a magic pill, and it turns out that a man came up and put his hand on her neck and said that she needed to go introduce herself. It was as if it were magic. His hand seemed to heal all his wounds. The girl asked me to forgive her, but I should have known about it. The girl finally left, and the princess thanked him for his help. It was a small thing compared to what she had done for him. He still owes her for that gorgeous dress, and now they're even. Interesting principle. He still owes her and pays everything in full. They began to climb the high stairs. The main thing is not to fall. So the man climbed to the very top and asked for a little attention. He came here to formally introduce his bride. She began to get very nervous because of the many looks at her. As a friend, the Duke felt this and asked her if everything was okay. The Duke said that soon the princess would become his legal wife and would fully rule the duchy. He tried to tell her how important she was and that she shouldn't worry. Even though she had no intention of ruling the duchy, his words inspired her. After all, she is now the center of this universe. Having finished her speech, the girl said that she was forced to go to the children and check on them. The man did not let go of her hand because their relationship was strictly business. But he reminded her that the banquet was held to welcome her. Then you need to give all the spectators their first dance. She didn't understand why he chose her. She was already about to leave, but he grabbed her hand. If he is so smart, then how come he didn't know about the situation with the children? He replied that sometimes it's hard not to pay attention to those around you, and he said that his bride's emotions were rather feigned. He took her by the waist and began to twirl her in a dance. The girl looked only at his face, and I fell more and more in love with his facial features and character. They also saw their lovely children at the table, and she asked if she could leave the dance for the kids. He replied that it was as he wished. Suddenly she stumbled and realized that everything could not go smoothly, and she fell right on the Duke. It was too banal a move. He might have changed his mind about letting her dance with the children. After all, if anything, they wouldn't have caught her, but he still allowed it. Now that they are not finished with this test, they can welcome the guests. The man wanted to tell his bride something because she was going to visit her children, and he said that he needed to spend more time with his brothers and sisters, so they would go together. The children were already tired of waiting for them and asked if they had resolved their urgent matters. They also said that the desserts were delicious and that my sister fell asleep on the couch, so she didn't eat much. The man completely attracted the attention of all the guests, and the children definitely respect him as an older brother. Suddenly, Jasmine ran up, wanting a big hug. But the man himself can handle the children and let her enjoy the banquet. It seems like the girl wanted to dance with the children, but now seems like the right time. The girl offered to dance with her, and of course she did not refuse. Everyone wanted to dance with the princess when she said they would take turns. As she promised, the children took turns having the honor of dancing with her. Thomas invited her with all the formalities, so she had to be a lady too. The boy said how magnificent and beautiful her outfit was. This is the work of a man with an impeccable sense of style. It takes someone with the same sophisticated sense of style to perfect it. As a friend, the boy said, she had fully earned his trust, and she decided that the child fully deserved her love and the attention of everyone around her. They returned to the table and asked what they had missed. The girl came, and I said how she could doze off like that after they parted with the princess. It was as if she was hypnotized. She slept like a child until everyone was dancing. The girls were surprised why they danced with everyone else, but not with them. And then she asked the princess for a chance, and Jasmine also wanted to dance with us. Her Highness must have been tired of entertaining the children, and then the brother asked if he would be willing to dance. And all the children lined up to dance with him. But some have already danced with the princess, so they will give in to those who have not danced. They all dance with him next time. That means they will be able to sit through another banquet with them. The Duke said they could come to as many banquets as they wanted. The children remembered this phrase and couldn't wait for the next holiday. Now the girl has already returned home and lay down on her favorite bed. It was a hard, long day filled with joy. She had to be on guard all the time, and Jasmine fell asleep in her arms right during the dance. And I also stroked the groom's head. No one has done that for a long time. And when she marries their brother, she will become part of the family. Children want a real family with a real wedding, but it won't happen. And then it dawned on her why she thought this would be a bad marriage. Or she left the Duke's life because she realized how much she had abused the children. Even if she doesn't want to stand in the way of happiness, she should think about children more quickly. She can't afford to cancel the wedding. After the welcoming banquet, the man set to work and hired servants to fill the vacant position. The knight who was hired as a guard was assigned to the position of a security guard. The sweet sisters played hide and seek with him, but did not expect who they would meet. They found an unusual guest. They were little puppies. My sister told me not to go close to them because they could be dangerous. The girl shouted to her guard, but they were too far away. Well, the animals needed help, or they wouldn't last long. Then the girl made a risky decision, but she couldn't just let them die. One of them was bleeding from the mouth. It was creepy. They ran as fast as they could, one of them much worse off than the other. Suddenly, the younger sister fell and said that her arms and knees hurt a lot. The eldest didn't know what to do because Jasmine couldn't walk on her own, Suddenly, their security guard appeared and, of course, helped them. He picked up both the children and the puppies and carried them to the castle. At this point, the princess was working and decided that was enough for today. All the work is done, which means that the knight will be able to return to his duties as a guardsman by tomorrow. She wondered what the children were doing there and went to see. Suddenly, she saw that they were running from the garden, and they were also carrying someone in their hands. The children told the girl the whole story and immediately helped the puppies. They found the puppies in the garden, somewhere on the border between the garden and the forest. It reminded me of an episode where the kids took in a puppy that looked like a wolf, but in the original, they only saved one. The other one had already died by the time they were found, and the children needed to be protected. The children asked her if these little animals would die, and how can they help them? But the girl was flying in her thoughts and did not know what to do. After all, she only thought that she could change the plot, and now these puppies appeared. The princess said that everything would be fine with them and they would survive. She said to call a vet who knows about hounds or horses. The head assistant said to tell the cook to prepare dinner. At this time, the maid came into the office and said that she had an urgent message. The man was very tired and did not understand what was happening. She said the girls came across 2 unknown puppies and picked them up and also injured themselves. They had small wounds on their arms and legs, but they had already been treated. They were surprised at first how much they looked like wolves, but they were wrong. Suddenly, the man remembered something, especially about the animals that lived nearby. The man immediately went into the office to see the girls and the bride. The man approached her and asked how she was feeling. She replied that she would not cause any more inconvenience. He said that he didn't come to scold them because they were worried, but they just have small scratches. They have already been treated. It's good that everything is in perfect order. First aid has been provided, but it would be better for the doctor to look at the wounds again. The girl was sure that the Duke had heard about the puppies. She said that she wrapped them in a blanket so that they wouldn't freeze. They are on the table. The man walked up to the table and opened the blanket. There he saw a pet that helped him during difficult times in his childhood. In the original, the dog lived in the forest and was born to puppies, but was later killed by wolves. The children came across one puppy, and the man went to look for their mother, but all in vain. Then the man asked the girls if they were found on the border between the garden and the forest, and then he was obliged to send out a search party, but the girl was categorically against it. She immediately understood that he hoped to find their mother. Well, from where? If it is a pet, then it probably returned to its owner, because a mother always takes her children to a safe place. And for puppies, such a place is right here. She was clearly trying to find her way to this castle. Then he should ask himself this question, but is it worth it? He remembered where she felt happiest when they were together. Well, the man still couldn't pinpoint this place. Now only came to mind one place, and it was right that they did not gather to search the forest. He decided to organize a search party of rescuers and knights. The girl begged him to take her with him, even if it was dangerous. The man agreed, but the main thing was for her not to lag behind. Child led them into a garden full of cherry trees in bloom. As soon as the knights arrived, they too set out to search. She still tried to remember something specific, but she couldn't remember anything. It was one of the saddest episodes. In the book where the dog died after the wolves attacked, if he was wounded, he couldn't have gone far. She must be hiding somewhere in a dark place, in the overgrown grass, for example. The girl saw a similar place and began to take a good look at it. Suddenly, she saw blood on the grass. It was definitely a mark from a dog. She followed the trail and found the poor dog and started shouting to everyone about it. The Duke immediately ran to her. She had a deep wound and needed urgent help. Suddenly, the man pulled her hand, which she bit him on. But he assured me that he would not do anything bad or harm me. And everything is fine. It doesn't hurt him at all, but it hurts to see her suffering. He apologized to her. It would have taken him so long to find and protect her. After this, the dog let out a short last breath, as if telling the man that everything would be fine. The Duke sent her to take care of the puppies, and he went to guard her mother. By this time, the veterinarian had already arrived and was examining the animals. They need to be well fed, and then they will recover quickly, so you need to tell the maid's recommendations. The knight said that she couldn't go outside alone now, and it was dark there. And he doesn't need to stay late. As soon as he finishes, let him go to bed. The girl went outside and realized that the Duke was most likely still at the grave. In the book, he spent the whole night there, and it turned out to be true. The girl didn't want to disturb him, but she still came up to him. But she can't leave his wound alone. It needs to be treated urgently. And then she asked if he would let her do it. He replied that he had made her worry in vain, but that it was all nonsense. The girl began to wash the wound with alcohol, and his eyes turned red. The dog loved this flower garden, and would chase the petals when the cherry blossoms were in bloom. It wasn't hard to remember her favorite place, after all. That was the only place he spent time with her. Then he left the estate, and she returned there to look for him, but did not find him. Well, even when the dog itself was in danger, she still thought about him. What a useless owner he was. Well, if she thought so, she wouldn't remember him and that place, and wouldn't have decided to go there. Perhaps it was simple instinct, the safest place for her, but he saw something different in her. She read relief and happiness in his eyes. She looked calm and happy, although perhaps he didn't notice, as if she was saying how glad she was to be reunited with him. If this is really so, then he is calm about her. The girl did not leave. She stayed to sit with him since she was not very tired. But at one point, she seemed to pass out after studying for the exam all night. The Duke didn't want to wake her, but for some reason it happened that way. But there is no need to be embarrassed about this. He thanked her for being with him. It will be dawn soon, and it's time to go back and get some good sleep. He had planned this anyway, because he had already been grieving at the grave for too long. He said his last words that he couldn't be with her for so long, but he would take care of the puppies, and she will pass on to you all the love and help that she gave him. He apologized to his fiancée for taking too long to say goodbye to the animal. They changed their looks, and everyone went home to sleep. The walk back was quiet, the path was much shorter, and there was silence. They really didn't need to see her off, even though she really appreciated it. He will ask the maids not to disturb her, so that she can have a good rest and put her thoughts in order. But it's not that she has a lot of things to do, she's just tired of such events. The first time he called her by name, the girl was very surprised. He thanked her for always being there for him, and if she needed support, he would come. The girl was deeply moved by these words, and she will remember them for a long time. And he asked if he could ask her to let her raise the last puppy she found. Of course I allowed it and thanked him for suggesting it. The girl did not understand why she was embarrassed and what was happening to her. He could conquer anyone with that charming face. He conquered them with just one look. It doesn't look like he's really going to marry her, but the chances that he will marry her are very high, because so far everything is going according to script. He is not pretending, he is just polite and perhaps a life partner. But her heart was beating so hard that she couldn't take it calmly. And most of the time they talked about the puppies, since they had never communicated so much. Before the end of spring, the puppies started to recover and everything was fine. They do not need further treatment. They are young and healthy. And then the children can come and play with them, because the puppies are already quite healthy. She asked the guard to look after the puppies, and she would return in an hour. They are supposed to throw a party to celebrate the arrival of puppies into the family. The weather was beautiful, and she decided that a picnic with the puppies and children would be the perfect option. They sat down on the tablecloth, and the girl invited the knight to sit down as well. There is a very tasty sandwich for him that she made herself. But for some reason, the knight was modest, because he was ready to cling to tasty food with his teeth. Suddenly the knight sneezed, but it was still unknown why. Is the principal really afraid of puppies and doesn't want to eat because of this? Well, it turns out he's allergic to wool. And to amuse him, she even barked. He stepped over himself while he was looking after them, and they didn't bite him. While the knights were eating a sandwich, the children hurried along. The children came running with happy faces, because they heard that they had some important news. I didn't show the 3 puppies in the basket. Everyone immediately sat down to look at them. These are the same puppies that the girls saved, and they are clearly excited. Suddenly, the girl remembered about that very game, but calmly in the crab. The children quickly repeated after her and fell silent. And now she decided to imagine that these were new family members. And his lordship will take care of the one in the middle. It's a boy. And they took care of the rest. But they wanted to play with her highness more. Suddenly, the animal wanted to play with her and jumped on her a little. The girl hugged the dog so that she wouldn't fall. She was so warm and fluffy. The boy said that they needed to come up with names. Didn't his brother name them? These two will be their close companions, so they definitely need to come up with nicknames. The girl asked if the Duke would mind if they came up with nicknames themselves. And so the girl wanted to offer her own version. She wanted to name him Laura, and then their nicknames will rhyme with the children's names. While they were thinking about what to name them, they decided to have a snack of delicious sandwiches. She was very pleased to hear such compliments about her food. Suddenly, they saw a butler in the distance with a box in his hands. The butler asked if everything was going well for them, and he brought a gift. This was a gift from Mr. Somov, and there were 3 collars and a necklace inside. Obviously, the necklace was for her, as well as a letter that thanked her. The girl was very happy with such a gift and such an honor. The man wrote that this necklace is made of special stones that never burn the skin with cold. But the girl still didn't understand why he wanted to go to the festival with her. And in general, does she understand correctly? And how is he talking about the festival? And she decided to ask the butler this question. Take Val was called Jerapy. It is the only one held in spring. It turns out the girl wasn't mistaken, but reminded me specifically about this festival. This is a festival where the main character and the man will understand that they feel for each other. But this should only happen in a couple of years, but I mixed something up in the time of action. A boy ran up and asked what had happened to her. The girl got scared. He didn't want to scare me, but it's not his fault, because she's just flying somewhere in the clouds. So what worried the princess? She replied that she simply looked at the parcel from his brother. And the prince also asked to pay attention to him in the evening. He wants to discuss something important. If your brother sent you such a gift and a letter, most likely he is asking the girl out on a date. Well, nothing has been decided yet. She has other things to do in the evening. The boy asked if she really didn't love him so much that she was looking for any way to avoid the wedding. But this was not the case, and the girl said that it was time for her to go get ready. The butler asked if there was anything to convey to his lordship. The girl said that she would come to him soon and talk to him. She came early to get a sense of the atmosphere. Everyone was dressed in fancy clothes, and I really liked it there, and it was clear that in such an environment people would fall in love. And she couldn't understand what he had told her. Suddenly, she heard his name and voice behind her. What was he doing there at such a time? The man apologized for being late and said he wouldn't keep you waiting long. The man came up behind her and sat down at the table. He said that there was no need to communicate with him so formally because they were practically a married couple. And he said that he started all this, but what exactly was not clear. He is a cunning fox who knows how to interest a girl. Suddenly a waiter came and took the order, and she ordered cookies, but they brought her something completely different. It turns out that the prince had heard that this establishment made excellent cookies, and so he ordered some. The man asked to call him by name, but why such tenderness? It was difficult for the girl to comprehend, but she still agreed. After trying the cookies, the girl really liked the taste. What if instead of the main character, she went with him? Child even bought her all these cookies and snacks for the kids. She thanked him. Well, in the end, after the wedding, his fortune will become hers too. But in the near future, he will marry the main character. They will get divorced. She had already come up with a scene where a man would bring that same girl home, and it would be very unpleasant. She has to find the best ending so it doesn't affect the children. In the distance, they saw that everyone was gathering in the square, and the night shops should already be open by that time. These stalls sell a wide variety of food and drinks. The princess really wanted to try them. She asked to go somewhere. Along the way, they saw street food. Nothing could beat these delicacies. He had never seen her so happy and such a sincere smile. She even felt awkward. Holidays lift her spirits. And the girl took a shashlik for herself, and the man just watched her. Well, what's happening to her is that she feels really strange today. The man seemed to fall in love with her more and more every second, and he said that the girl needed to do something with her hair, maybe change her color. After all, now she needs to be unnoticeable because she could become someone's target. She said she would try tying her hair into a ponytail. Well, how dangerous can it be? Because the prince is much stronger than any knight. The girl got a new hairstyle, and it looked even better on her. And the girl was embarrassed by this. Was it really true that the hair was not the only reason for concern? Fiora was very tired and asked to sit down, and there was also a performance going on. They watched with interest the dance of the girl, who also played the flute. The girl was amazed by such a magnificent performance and asked if it was always like this at festivals. It's part of the mistress competition, so everything is amazing and wonderful here. Suddenly, a very familiar person came onto the stage. The next participant was announced, a girl who would play the violin. This is the very main character of the novel. But why did they meet so early? And this girl didn't even understand who she would have to see. She hoped that this would happen at least after the wedding. And the prince asked if she knew her, and she replied that she had simply confused her with a friend. It turns out that this competition is very similar to a beauty contest. To understand what this event is, it is worth knowing who Japiria is. This girl is the goddess of spring. She helps those who remain against the will of their beloved to unite. Its legend tells of two lovers who were forcibly separated by their families, but thanks to God, they are together again. To highlight this event, they organize a celebration where everyone shines with beauty and talent. It turns out that she is there only as a participant in the competition, at least something joyful. This girl is charming. Her violin playing is elegant and refined. The princess could not believe that she had actually met her so early. But for some reason, the man didn't even look at her. He should have fallen in love with her at first sight. And all the time, it is being considered whether there is really someone else in this love triangle. At that moment, the man took her hand and wanted to ask a question. Doesn't she want to eat more? Because the market is huge, and she only ate one shashlik. They heard beer being handed out there, cool and foamy. And the girl immediately bought them 2 beers. The prince didn't even expect that. They were offered appetizers, especially chicken, fried and boneless. The lady, of course, agreed to such an appetizing offer. He said that he would bring the food very quickly, and they would be delighted with the taste. He couldn't even imagine that beer and chicken would inspire her so much. She lives and breathes beer and chicken, and the food has become quite popular. Well, the girl completely forgot to ask his opinion, but the man said that he was happy with everything as it was. The most important thing for him was that she agreed to go with him. He had never gone to the festival before. This man is definitely a seducer. I immediately felt some kind of misunderstanding. The girl suggested having a drink and celebrating this holiday, and she told him to raise his beer mug because he didn't want to. Suddenly, the prince laughed, but the girl did not understand what was funny in her words. It was just unexpected to hear from her. Of course, he agreed. They sat on a bench, drank beer, and waited for their snacks. After some time, the girl had already drunk 4 bottles of beer, and the man didn't think that she would get so drunk. And the girl at this time offered to have another drink. She would forget about it anyway, and she told her to drink it all at once. The guy said it was time for her to stop, but she liked the feeling of euphoria, that light and happy feeling. Suddenly, at that very moment, the girl fell into his arms. As he thought it was only a matter of time, the knight immediately ran up to them, and he said that he would take the girl home himself, but the man told him to stay and have fun. And he asked what about the drunk highness? Will she get home in the evening? The man said that the groom would look after the bride and he could go. The next day, the girl asked if she had screwed up in front of the gentleman. Well, that's not true. At that time, everyone around was working tirelessly. The children distanced themselves from her. She even asked why this was happening and replied that everyone was just busy. And she couldn't even help the butler because the bride shouldn't work. Late in the evening, she was left completely alone and thought a lot. She was surprised at how much she fit into this world, despite being a completely different person. After spending time with the prince and the children, she no longer felt so lonely. And at this time, the children were sitting in the room and saying that 2 people walked in the corridor, and they were sure that on such a day they would be late. They heard a noise. It was other guys running, and so 2 brothers and sisters came into their room. Even the knight came to them, but Jasmine was already asleep. Thanks to the butler, they managed to choose a place. Just in case, they came up with signs, which only they will understand. This is a very good idea. Everyone was ready. All that was left was to carry out the plan. The boy told the knight to lead the princess astray in order to keep everything a secret. The children prepared a special gift for their brother and the princess in honor of the wedding. All these days of the week they were preparing for this moment, each of them. A task that you have not decided on will not allow you to make mistakes. They decided to make the best wedding cake in the world, and of course they were helped by a chef. He helped them make the legendary cake, and it was a great honor for him to be a part of this process. The cake was a bit of a puzzle, because when I first saw the design, it was not clear how to make it, but the reason why the lords turned to him is quite obvious. Therefore, he prepared thoroughly, and all the ingredients were already ready. And to help them bake cookies and cake, he had already prepared the base. It wasn't difficult, and all the other worries fell on them. They must breathe life into the eyes, that is, into this cherry on the cake. And the maid also agreed to help them with this work. When they started making the dough, they couldn't do it. And his sister kept telling him that he simply couldn't do anything. And after some time, the boy made little figures of people. The next day, the youngest sister woke up, and I asked the girl if she wanted to have breakfast, but she replied that she wanted to make cake with everyone. The maid replied that everything was ready because she had been fast asleep since June and they began to wake her up. The girl was furious that they started cooking without her. She immediately ran to the kitchen to see the results of the cake. The cookies for decoration were already ready. Now it was time to choose who would be entrusted with decorating the cake, and everyone started to quarrel. The cook said they couldn't do it all together. After all, the most important thing is already ready. You need to put 10 cookies, so they divide them equally. The children agreed to this arrangement and were ready to decorate the cake. In a few minutes, everything was ready. They were so afraid of ruining the cake that their hands were shaking, and the chef said that it needed to be adjusted a little bit, and then he would show the finished result. At that moment, Jasmine came in and couldn't believe that they had already finished doing everything without her. After all, she had been waiting for this moment her whole life, and she didn't even help prepare the wedding cake. The girl screamed and cried. No one knew how to calm her down. Peter left 1 cookie for her, and she can decorate the cake. Well, it turns out that this is not the problem at all. And the fact is that the girl brought puppies with her who can do stupid things. They immediately ran to the magnificent cake. At this time, the knight rushed to take them, and at the same moment removed them to a safe distance. The girl had already stopped crying because she saw such a moment. The puppies disappeared, and then they could talk calmly. The girls just had to make the final touch. Everyone was very happy that the baby was no longer crying, and everything was fine. and these small animals almost ruined the whole event. The knight kept an eye on the little girl and managed to remove the puppies in time. The kids said they would look after the puppies, and he could go do his business. There's a lot of fur left on him. These two are a real problem. Suddenly, the girls wanted to urgently ask something and talk to him. The girl was upset and asked to talk to her for at least a minute. She needs to work on her breathing. She doesn't know why, but she needs to. The little girl thanked the knight for saving the cake. The guy was pleased to hear this, but he wouldn't see her later. And the girl glowed with happiness, having said such warm words to him. Newlyweds were walking on the street, and the guard was behaving rather strangely and looked nervous. And the prince unexpectedly took her to that place and said that the children were looking for them. Well, judging by his face, he doesn't care what's going on either. After some time, they were already at their destination and were waiting for the children. The man asked if she had been to this kindergarten with her children, but this was her first time there. They had no idea what children could come up with. The butler met them at the door and thanked them for coming. Well, they were called children. They are men, or they got something mixed up. This special event was prepared by the lords, a modest wedding event for the two of them. They couldn't even believe that little children could throw such a huge party. She even began to suspect that the Duke knew about all this. But suddenly, a little girl ran up and said that they had arranged everything themselves. She also presented a wreath to the princess. He suited her image very well. She said how beautiful she was. The butler invited them to go to the place of celebration, and they followed him down the decorated gangway. The two kids exchanged glances as a signal, and they began to play a melody on the piano and violins. A wonderful concert was arranged for them. They watched their performance with delight. A huge cake, decorated by the children themselves, was also waiting for them. This cake was like a picture. You can't even believe it. And now they had to cut it. The girl suggested that they both do it. They cut the first piece of this magical cake, and the children congratulated them on their engagement with all their hearts. They also prepared something else, and they need to present them to each other. They really tried their best and prepared everything perfectly. The girl couldn't even imagine what she had in her hands. The man suspected that she had no idea what she was holding in her hands. It needs to be around the handle, Child suggested. This tradition comes from beloved knights who tied it to their hilts. The newlyweds were very happy with this gift and thanked the children. And by evening it was already dark. They didn't even notice how time had flown by. They were so happy and had a great time, and it was all thanks to this ceremony. She was so worried about why they were avoiding her, but it turns out they did a good job. A girl came up and asked if they could spend the night together. Not a bad idea, and the bedroom is big enough so it could be done. The younger girl was very happy that her brother would also be with them. Well, suddenly she said that at night adults do other things. Well, that's strange, because Mom and Dad always slept in the same bed. If your highness does not plan to develop a relationship and get married, the children were too smart to be outwitted. The princess had an idea and asked everyone to listen to her. And she said that today they should sleep in the same room because their logic cannot be argued with. Or at least pretend, then they will fall asleep and it will all be over. Child said that they would all spend the night with him in their peace. This is all to make sure the children are happy and the holiday is a success. Otherwise, the girl already thought that he wasn't joking and that everything was serious. But it was strange that the children lay between the lovers. And the girl snores quite loudly. They are engaged, but this is not a romantic relationship at all. And perhaps it's all for the best, because she doesn't know that they're not having a wedding ceremony. And the reason they host events is simple. In order to delay the wedding as long as possible, he can buy himself a little time. At least that's what he originally planned, but now he was starting to fall in love with her. This further encourages him to stick to his original plan. It was a grand event at the temple. However, the process itself was quite simple. They took an oath and exchanged rings. The guests blessed them and congratulated them, and this event as a whole cemented their marriage. But then, of course, there was law. The children congratulated the new newlyweds from the bottom of their hearts. And they said how beautiful they were, and it's no wonder that everyone was smitten. The man was afraid to say something, but his sister encouraged him. The girl also said that there is no need to be shy about saying something. The boy was very embarrassed. It was quite cute and funny. Now that they are officially engaged, maybe he can call her sister. Well, why a sister? She is also his brother's wife. And immediately all the brothers and sisters wanted to call her sister. She asked her husband for help because she didn't know what to answer. Well, here you have to be on your own because you can't outsmart them. You can't argue with their logic. What did he mean by that? Why do these words sound so familiar? It turns out she said the same thing there once. Did she really make him so angry at night? But it was all for the sake of the children. And the celebration was little different from a welcoming banquet. The couple must dance, but the day was exhausting. She also wore comfortable shoes. So luckily, the man danced with his younger sister. When she saw them in their place, peace appeared in her soul, and she was looking for something to drink, since she could take a break from everything. The girl asked the waiter for 1 glass of champagne. This alcohol was very light and tasty. This drink is perfect for relaxing. Then she asked for another glass because she liked it very much. It's probably very expensive, but tastes just like the doctor ordered. She thought she needed to drink more to quench her thirst. Suddenly, a child came up and said that she had enough drinking. She had never heard her address him in such a tone before. In his eyes, he looks completely different, and from last time he remembers how poorly she tolerates alcohol. This explains the knight's grin. It turns out that something bad happened then. He wanted to tell her something again, but the girl seemed not to understand anything. He just started being in front of her and didn't lecture her. Suddenly he took half of it and offered it to her. Her limit is 2.5 glasses. It's better for her not to drink more. After all, if you believe his calculations, she took it after 3 glasses. And then she remembered that she hadn't even apologized to her husband. But the man replied that it was not so important. It was even very funny to watch her drunk. They even screamed, and the children didn't understand why. After the wedding ceremony, everything was quiet and peaceful. But one day, Thomas caught a fever. Having been ordered to put on gloves, masks, and look after the children, she immediately ran into the room to her husband's son. The boy was lying there all red, and everything hurt a lot. He looked like he was dying. Everyone immediately felt very sorry for him. He had a rash, redness, and a dry cough, even a high fever. These are symptoms of measles. But now everything was in the girl's hands. If she called the doctor, he would only arrive in a few days. The rest of the children are fine. They don't have any symptoms. Well, for safety's sake, they need to sit in their rooms under supervision. They need to be vigilant, and they hope that the children will endure everything. It was necessary to urgently call a doctor to assess the boy's health. She should have been better prepared for this situation. She so stupidly missed this moment. If it weren't for the maid, she wouldn't have thought to call a doctor. What a pathetic teacher she is, so useless and underprepared. Maybe it was always like this throughout her life, when suddenly a boy called her sister. She asked him how he felt, and he didn't need to talk, just lie down and rest. The boy felt that he would soon get better, and everything would be fine. And he also said thank you for the fact that she was watching and worrying about him. Girl, always be there for as long as it takes for his health. And she told him not to worry about anything. Go to bed, because the body recovers faster while you sleep. When she left the room, the maid announced that the doctor had arrived. It's good that they reacted so quickly. Otherwise, things could have been worse. It is an honor for him to be in this palace to help the child. First, he was taken to the boy to examine him and see if he had any symptoms. It turns out the boy wasn't asleep yet, and I could calmly go in and take a look. He woke up early, but why isn't he sleeping yet? Brother heard that Thomas was sick and it woke him up, but he will recover soon. Doctors examine him to make sure quarantine is necessary. First, you need to extend your hand. The boy didn't want to do this. Well, I did it to support my brother and for my health. It was as if some sacred power was happening. It impressed me very much. The boy is absolutely healthy, and no illnesses will cripple him in the near future. She needs to check on the others as soon as possible, so if anything happens, let the maid report it. The baby also told her not to forget to take care of her health. The girl was touched by his words. She didn't think that children were so sensitive. After the boy, they checked the other children who were nearby, and fortunately, they were absolutely healthy. She was very worried about the lack of medicine in this world, but everything turned out well. All that remains is to check the youngest Jasmine. Suddenly, an alarmed maid came running and started screaming. It turns out that the youngest girl also fell ill. She was lying on the bed in a very serious condition. But in the book, everything was fine with her, and she hoped that the plot would change. But why is she thinking about this now? The child is very ill. What happened to her? They are no longer characters, but real people. They are children who feel pain and all the punishment. You need to focus on the present and think about what to do. She had to do everything she could, and now the morning had come. As soon as the butler arrived, he immediately helped the girl and the boy get settled. They reacted very quickly, and I'm sure that everything is under control now. Several years ago, an epidemic occurred, and it filled the entire kingdom. Even now, when his lordship has left, they need to hurry. Well, the gentleman went too far, and it is unknown when he will return. Such diseases need to be treated as soon as possible. Yana needs to come up with an idea, and he asked the butler if she even had the right to do something like that. He replied that they were officially husband and wife, so she had the right to everything. Even if there is such a risk, it does not mean that she should stay in the country. She will take responsibility. Criticism and discontent are nothing in the face of the death of the innocent. It turns out that people's lives are more important than dignity and leadership. It's quite strange to hear this from the princess. She said that she would need a butler. She has much to tell His Majesty when he returns. After she and the butler checked something, she began to act. The first thing she did was close the city gates and the hospitals belonging to His Majesty's house, usually not intended for nobles, but in this situation provided to everyone. She looked after sick children, receiving reports on the situation with the epidemic in the country. The number of sick people was decreasing, which meant that soon they wouldn't be able to open the gates. The older brother was already much better, but the little one was getting worse. Suddenly, the maid came in and called the princess by name. She said that it was worth resting, since she hadn't slept for a couple of days. But they don't have enough workers, she can't just stand aside. At that moment, the butler arrived and knocked on their room door. He had bad news. The girl was very upset about it. After all, people have gathered around the fortress, and they are simply furious, demanding to be released. The soldiers are having a hard time controlling the crowd, and they should take more drastic measures. But the girl could not understand their discontent. In this case, the maids were assigned to look after the children, and she would decide everything. She wanted to see all this with her own eyes. And she asked the butler to prepare a carriage for her trip. If she just stood by and did nothing about the situation, she would not be worthy of being with him. He apologized because he had crossed all boundaries, and the carriage would soon be ready. After some time, the carriage stood near their palace, and the girl was looking forward to meeting these people. The people were furious and asked how long they would remain locked up. After all, they also have lives and they must work. The healthy ones must be released. But one cannot doubt the orders of His Majesty, and he told them to go home. Well, how can life be a betrayal? Why do they keep them there if everyone is at risk of getting sick? And then the Duke's carriage arrived, but there was a girl in it. Many heard that he went far away on some important business. You are looking for the Duke's bride, and she is here to blow up the whole situation. All the people did not believe that it was the princess who was dressed like that. Otherwise, how could she have arrived in her husband's carriage and accompanied by a butler? She asked for peace and silence so she could explain everything. Her Highness found time to talk to them personally, so it's better to remain silent. The closed door is an inconvenience, but thanks to this, they do not allow the spread of the disease. And if you don't nip it in the bud, the disease can spread and it will get worse. So she asked them to go home and wait a little. The crown princess swore to them that she would resolve the whole situation, and people offered their deepest apologies for their behavior. The girl, of course, listened to everyone and thanked them for their understanding. She was glad that the whole situation was resolved. She arrived home in the evening. By this time, the Duke had returned, and he had freed himself before the knights. And send the report later. First, he wants to know about the condition of the children. The man immediately went to the little girl and then went to the man. He didn't understand why this happened to me at the moment when he left. He came back as soon as he found out, but it still took many days. Is there really no one looking after the children? Suddenly, I saw my beloved girl lying on the floor. After some time, she was already lying in bed and did not understand what was happening. She looked after the little girl, but she doesn't remember what happened next. The maid told the princess to rest because she needed peace. The Duke found her in peace and carried her to her room, ordering her to keep an eye on her. So that's why she doesn't remember getting back to peace. Since the girl was being watched, she decided to lie down and sleep. She really needs to rest because she has been putting too much pressure on herself lately. I need to get some sleep. Only today can she allow herself such a thing. Tomorrow will be a new day and everything will be fine. But for some reason, I couldn't sleep. Maybe it was because she'd been lying there for a long time. And I decided to walk a little around the house and then return. This will help her fall asleep faster. She went out into the yard to get some fresh air. It was quite windy there, but it was a good thing she took her scarf with her. Suddenly she heard the groom's voice from behind, who asked why she was walking so late. He ordered the maid to keep an eye on you. She replied that she felt stuffy and that she was already getting ready to go back. He was finishing up some business and saw her in the window, decided to go out and ask her in person. He wants her to rest and calm down. She has been very overworked while he was gone. And when suddenly the man fell silent, I wanted to say something very important. I thanked the girl with all my heart for taking this terrible situation under control. She thanked him for his concern, but she already feels much better. But for some reason, she suddenly felt very dizzy and her vision went dark. At that moment, she fell right on top of the man. She was definitely still feeling sick and needed to go back and get some sleep. It was so inopportune. She felt very awkward in front of her fiancé. He thought it would be difficult for her to walk alone, so he offered to walk with her. He even picked me up because it wasn't his first time. Vitya, that time when they went to the festival, he also carried her in his arms. Well, the girl didn't want to listen to the details, and she asked to simply take her to the room in silence. The man looked into her bottomless eyes and smiled. It was cold and windy outside, He protected her from the bad weather. It was indeed very cold outside, and she fell ill again. The maid helped her to get well again. Fortunately, it's not an infection, but simply overwork, and you need to take some medicine. The illness made her miss her home world, which was always there at such moments. The sleep was shallow. Sometimes it was easier to breathe after a touch. So, on the 4th day, the fever subsided and her strength returned. Well, the maid still warned her against going outside. Well, the girl replied that she simply opened the window for fresh air. If it has become better, then she can send the Lord a visit to you. Well, the girl said that it was better to wait a couple more days. The girl sat down on the sofa and waited for breakfast. Although she was much better, it would be better to see the children tomorrow. Enduring this for another day is not a problem at all. She was full of determination and patience, and I couldn't help myself. At night, I really wanted some tea, and she herself got out of bed and wanted to pour herself some tea and go back. This should have helped her to sleep soundly. Suddenly, she saw that the light in the office was on. Is her man still working? She knocked on the door and asked if he was there. Frightened sounds were heard from behind the door. The man opened the door. He looked very sleepy. He has a mountain of work and hasn't slept for a very long time. That's why he looks so bad. The girl asked how she could help. But he said that he would only offer it after he had fully recovered. She wanted to at least make coffee for him and herself. The man looked at me with an incomprehensible look. Was he really against it? But it turns out he just doesn't drink coffee. Perhaps his health doesn't allow it. But it turns out it's just too bitter for him. The girl was even surprised. It was the first time she heard such a word. So he can't stand the bitter taste of coffee, and in most novels, the protagonist is resilient. It's usually like a stamp. In general, the man is quite nice and full of surprises. The girl asked to take a moment's leave. It was a surprise. She promised to make a special coffee that he would definitely like. She has never entered the kitchen when there is no one there. It was dark, but one candle was enough for her. She always admired the beauty of the kitchen, as if it were the first time for Viti. She saw the ingredients. There were enough of them. They are constantly preparing desserts there, so they have everything you need. She also took some cold milk and ice. Added a little sugar in, my love. It's like she's back to the good old days of being a barista. She used a coffee press and filled it with hot water and coffee. Then I poured out the coffee and added milk, and then shook it. Pour into a cup and pour in the coffee, add sugar and foam. And that's how you get the most delicious latte. She brought a cup of coffee to the man, and he asked what it was. This is coffee, and it is worthy of a sweet tooth like the man himself. It's definitely worth trying, because it's an unusual coffee. He thanked her for cooking for him in a special way. He didn't yet know whether he would like the coffee or not, but when he tried it, he felt a particularly sweet taste. As she said, it was really worth it. This coffee was the most delicious in his life. The girl was glad that she was able to please her beloved man, and if he wants, she could cook it for him next time. After that night, she felt that she had definitely recovered, but the maids insisted on lying down a little longer. The children came first, of course. She was glad to see the baby healthy. Thomas gave her a bouquet. Each of the children chose a flower for themselves. After the children left, the most unexpected guest arrived, the head of the order. He looked after his mother and was unable to return to duty when it was necessary to eradicate bandits. And to thank her and congratulate her on her engagement, he gave her earrings. And the next day, she became much earlier than usual. I wanted to carry out the plan that came to her mind while she was making coffee. She came to the cook in the kitchen. He didn't even expect it. She hoped she could use the kitchen, and of course he allowed it. She wanted to make a new cocktail, a milk drink with fruit. They will need fresh fruits, milk, and sugar. Luckily, they had everything ready. And they will also need whipped cream for decoration. Maybe she just didn't like his cooking, but it turns out she wants to cook something for the kids. The cook said that if he needed help, he should ask. And after he left, she started making fruit lattes for the kids. She felt the cook constantly looking in her direction with concern. She explained that she would bring the children drinks in place of breakfast. When she first entered the kitchen, it was still dark, but when she came out, the sun had already set. His girlfriend showed up in the dining room. She wished everyone good morning, because they had not had breakfast together for a long time. Everyone already called her sister, and the girls liked it. The girl asked if she was feeling better. Everyone was happy that their beloved nanny was recovering. Again, everyone started to quarrel about something, but soon they calmed down. Perhaps you should ask the girl to cook something light. But the girl agreed to any food, because she loves everything. The little girl suggested that she take her portion, because it had more vitamins. They were served an omelet with salad, their favorite dish, and also fell unknown drinks, which had never been drunk before. It turns out that these are special drinks made by the princess herself. The berries are hidden under the cream. The girls had strawberry, and the boys had banana. The children immediately guessed the taste correctly. For them, it was a new world. This drink is now the most delicious for them. The baby also confirmed that she was ready to drink it forever. Another thing that is rare to find in this world is that the man pretended that nothing was bothering him. I felt it before, but I kept forgetting what kind of person he is. Suddenly, the little girl screamed the girl's name. She asked if she knew what would happen in 10 days. But she had no idea and could not answer. The boy suggested that it was her birthday that day, and the girl said that her birthday was much earlier. This is a special day and very long awaited, you just have to wait. The princess decided to urgently start preparing for the holiday. Meanwhile, the man could not drink as much coffee as she made. She didn't want to disturb her, but he really needed coffee to concentrate. I decided to just ask her and pay her for it later. What if he thought he would offend her with his requests? And then suddenly, she opened the door and ran straight into a man. She apologized and said that she didn't think she'd meet him here, and she asked why he came and if she could do anything for him. He tried to think of a polite way to ask her, but he couldn't come up with anything. The girl thought it was about a gift for her younger sister. The butler reminded him of this a couple of days ago, but he completely forgot. It's good that they managed to talk. I wouldn't want to give the same gift. And they decided to discuss it so that there would be no misunderstandings. He was glad that the girl reminded me of this. Later, they came to the building where they were provided with everything they needed. A couple of minutes later, they came out with their purchase. The butler was right that she cared very much about the people. And the man literally bought half the store. Did he really buy too many toys and leave almost nothing for her? But her goal was through a completely different door. It's a magical item store, but why would she go there? These doors open by themselves. It's incredible. When they entered there, they saw many magical things. They were met by a guy at the checkout and greeted. They are one of only 5 shops in the entire kingdom that sell magical materials. They wanted to see some kind of magic wand. The Duke didn't even suspect that the girl was so strong in magic. This stick was just for the youngest girl, and so he again went into his thoughts. But this was understandable, given the estate's relationship with magic. The founder of their family was an outstanding magician. However, many of the descendants became butchers instead. For some reason, from generation to generation, his wife's abilities were betrayed. It's difficult. A man doesn't want to break a girl's heart or ruin her life. Her job is to make sure this talented flower blooms. She wanted to take a closer look at the stick in the center. It was taken out of the display case. She saw the portal with her own eyes, and later the wand itself. This wand is not only spectacular, but also the best of all offered. Then they started buying it without hesitation. It's a gift, so we asked to wrap it nicely. And now you don't have to worry, the holiday will be a good one. Suddenly, she heard the same music that the children were playing at the ceremony. It turns out she was playing from a small magic box. It was a nice, soothing tune, though not that cool. And then a man came up and said that their gift was wrapped. The child also said that they would not buy this box either. And they will also pack it as a gift without any problems. The man asked if there was anything else he liked. As a thank you, she wanted to make him coffee. After all, he lacked relaxation, and he was also very tired. The man was embarrassed. Mishima really liked that latte, and let them be embarrassed to ask her to make coffee. The men thanked her with all their hearts. Time flew by in an instant, and now the birthday has arrived. The children urgently asked her to help with one important task. She was supposed to distract Jasmine, but suddenly she started crying, thinking that the sisters and brothers had completely forgotten her birthday. After all, on her last birthday, her mom and dad were with her. Well, what should the princess do to calm her down? How a brother approached a friend and said that he loved her very much. He took me in his arms and asked me not to cry anymore. And the girl asked if he missed his mom and dad. And parents and children used to be sent to these lands. The man replied that he also missed him very much and that the club was visible. The girl even offered to help calm the child, but he refused. But if she cries on this special day, her parents will be upset. And the girl immediately stopped crying when she heard these words. They were glad that the child had finally calmed down. Later, they went into the house where everyone was congratulating him on his birthday. But she was so upset that they all forgot about him. Today, she is their beautiful, kind princess. And everyone called her respectfully. They also made a throne especially for her there. So she told everyone to sit down at the table and help themselves. The man and the girl also wanted to join her. Once everyone was seated, the celebration began. Jasmine tried very hard to play the role of a princess right up until mealtime. The waiter came up to her and asked if she wanted dessert. Of course she did. Then they will serve desserts during the gift opening ceremony. And the brothers and sisters had special gifts for her. It was a toy, shoes, a hair clip, and a hat. She said that she would treat everyone to sweets. Also, the older brother wanted to make a gift from himself, and he'll need a couple extra hands to do that. At that moment, the princesses came in and brought 3 huge boxes, and also many more boxes with gifts. The girl asked him to come closer to her. I wonder what she wanted to say or do. The little girl kissed him on the cheek and thanked him for the gifts. This award goes to the person who gave the best gift. It is a great honor for him to be chosen. And now they are closer than ever. It's wonderful. And then the butler asked if it was possible to bring out the gift that the princess had prepared. She didn't even know that the princess herself would give a gift. She was handed a magic wand. She looked like a flower, with the help of which they cast spells. The girl really liked this gift. She had never seen anything like it before. The little girl also kissed the princess on the cheek as a sign of gratitude. And also from Her Highness they brought a special dessert. This is a special strawberry drink, made especially for her. The girl couldn't resist and jumped right on top of the princess. She really likes her gifts, no matter what they are. Even though she says she is happy with her, she can't replace her parents. If she can make her happy, then nothing else matters. The boys were already eager to start on desserts, and the man also suggested trying the new drink. The girl hoped that he would like the strawberry flavor, and she asked if he wanted her to cook something else for him. But the man said it wasn't worth it. It tastes just as good as the coffee I tried before. The children looked at them and smiled. They looked like lovebirds. And since they are already married, the guy is obliged to make her the happiest. It was a huge order, and everyone started applauding her. And a little late in the palace, everyone gathered to see her off. The children asked if she really had to leave, and they told her to promise to return to them. A few days after the birthday, the whole family was crying. Because of the letter from the royal palace, it is an invitation to the coronation. It takes a whole week to travel on one card, and taking everything into account, the trip will take a month. Children who lost their parents on one of these trips were upset, but they will still return someday, even if it's in a month. The girl said that she was not leaving for long, and that they would be in touch all the time. The little girl asked if she was promised this, and they decided to make a pinky swear. They hold each other's little fingers and sing a song. The little girl promised that they would wait for the girl no matter what. And then they decided to leave right then and there. It was time to go to the palace, they decided. The carriage drove through forests and fields. It looks like they have already left the country. She hopes that the children will not disappear. Suddenly the man asked what all this was about. Namely, this oath with the little finger or something similar. Is he really curious to know why they did it? A friend from a distant country told her about this. They link little fingers to be together, and they make promises that they will keep some of their actions. He was always surprised by her new actions. He also thanked her for agreeing to go with him. But she just does what she has to, because she's been a family child for an hour now, and she felt very bad a few days ago. From here, she sees a clear sky and a lush forest. She could enjoy the magnificent scenery, so there was no complaining. And somewhere nearby, there must be a city. They must go there to rest. But the man also needed rest, so it was okay. As the man had said, they soon arrived in the city. He wasn't lying when he said he needed to rest, but the carriage went on and I can't rada. A man met him there and called him young master. And if they address a man like that, it could mean that they have known each other for a long time. And despite their age, they support each other. He also carries a real battle sword with him. Suddenly, the knight called him Dmitri, and she immediately remembered who he was. This is a distant relative of the man. He looked up to him in childhood, and he asked who the sweet lady next to him was. The man didn't even believe it and offered his congratulations. The princess is His Highness's fiancée, and it is a great honor for him to meet her personally. They hoped they could stay with him overnight. And of course they refused me. They will offer every effort to make them like it. They set a huge table. They really tried their best with that. After all, people were very hungry, and anyone in his place would have felt bad. And if they are already ready for dessert, he can ask to bring it out. Suddenly, a man knocked on the door and said that they did not want to go to the stable. The man stood up and said he could help with this issue. And they were left alone, rather than talking alone. Suddenly, the man's nose started itching and he felt ill. He told the servant to clean up there before the prince returned. Childe apologized for having to leave because no one listened to him for a second. And then he asked the girl what he had missed. And they said that the old man was to blame. It was he who had caught a cold and was coughing. He's a very nice old man, though. Perhaps a cup of special mint tea will lift his spirits. He wanted to try this subtle taste again. And then he suggested that his wife try his tea. But she doubted whether it was right to keep everything a secret from the man. This disease has no cure, so there is no need to worry about it. He was really in a serious condition, and the prince could do nothing about it. People also become knights or magicians, using their power for good. But this power is a double-edged sword and can lead to death. Yana understands perfectly well what the man is leading to. She didn't want to be time for him, and she replied that she would be happy to fulfill his request. But on one condition, the man was surprised. One day he will invite an old friend to the duchy, and he must accept the invitation. And they took him by surprise, and everything will be good for him. And then of course he agreed. It turns out he found his other half. A few minutes later, the man returned with his mint tea. Although she doesn't like him very much, she really liked him. And a week later, we returned to the capital to enjoy the local beauty. And they greeted her with a special greeting. Everyone was very happy to meet the guy's main beloved in person. They sat and talked about everything, and quite a lot of time passed. The girl sometimes didn't know what to answer to their questions, and simply remained silent. How suddenly you, the girl, avoided her. Well, what did we do? It seems she now understands why he fell in love with her. It turns out she was embarrassed because she considers her a beauty. It is absolutely clear that the princess is the ideal of beauty. The girl was even embarrassed by such a confession. Yana was very modest, and then he asked when they would officially get married. Suddenly, a boy ran in and shouted that he wanted a mansion. Well, it was not clear what the child was saying. Most likely it was their son. The child fell to the floor and began demanding some kind of lock. The parents couldn't believe how their child was behaving. And then his mother told him to come to her. She taught him and warned him to behave well in front of everyone. She scolded him and told him to go for a walk with the other children. And you also need to apologize to the guests. He was very sorry that he interrupted their meeting. And the crown princess also arrived. She is the eldest sister in the family, and she is also very kind. This girl seemed to be glowing with the joy of beauty, and she asked if she could take the Emerald Hall for herself after the ceremony. The boy started to get nervous again because of some locks. After all, he will soon arrive in the Ruby Hall, but the Emerald one is not visible there. And she asked her dad if she could look after him. This boy will soon become the crown prince, and there is no need to disgrace himself. The boy was scolded every time and seemed to be unloved. Hopes they have a bad time. And when you ask for something, you need to know how to do it and what to say. The boy ran away in tears and said that he hated everyone. The children are quite smart and open, just like their father. But he can't tear his head off. But doubts arose. He felt like he was a bad father and also a bad teacher. Well, yes, we also wanted to ask each other questions, but it's time to go to bed. They were shown to their rooms, and I didn't look at all amazing. And unfortunately, the man was too busy. She was bored with one thing. So she decided to take a walk and asked the maid to make her a snack. She looked at the bright, clear sky and suddenly heard the sound of a child sobbing. And under the tree I saw that very son. She called his name and waited for him to respond.